This is why it pays off to read everything. Sometimes you find the most delicious details in the peripheral. Hello, my fam. It is Perez, the queen of all media, the original influencer, and your number one source for everything It Ends With Us saga. A couple of updates in this video. First, a brief one. A friend of mine who's following my coverage and is also into sports, not me, sent me a link with the headline that reads, quote, Caleb Williams teams up with Tom Brady's former publicist, Stephanie Jones, for an image makeover in his second year. Oh, how nice to see Stephanie Jones getting work still. Good luck to this Caleb fella. Not sure how long he'll be working with her. Some of you might remember Stephanie Jones. She is currently suing Justin Baldoni and is his former publicist. She's claiming breach of contract. He's claiming you sucked, you didn't listen, you were fired for cause. Plus, Stephanie Jones is at the center of all of those text messages and emails that were improperly taken from Jen Abel, his current publicist, who used to work for Stephanie Jones. And yeah, Stephanie Jones is no longer Tom Brady's publicist, but somebody's clearly still milking that connection. Because a story like this, I'm not going to say for sure, but seemingly planted. And I don't know jack about Caleb Williams. Why does he need an image rehab? I don't even care to Google it. Not my beat. This is, and let's get back to it. Last week, I told you all that a reporter for the Daily Mail has been dragged into all of this drama, and his lawyer submitted a letter to the judge asking for some more time to properly object to the subpoena from Delulu's publicist. We've now gotten that, and it's juicy. First, they make a lot of sense. The lawyer for James Vitushka says that Leslie Sloan's subpoena is inconsistent with the federal rules of civil procedure, the local rules of the Southern District of New York, that they impose discovery burdens on him greater than those warranted by Vitushka's status as a non-party being subpoenaed, meaning he's not part of this lawsuit. They object because the subpoena was vague. They object because the subpoena calls for documents or information that is not relevant nor proportional to the needs of the case. They object because the subpoena is duplicative and incomprehensible. This one might be a bit of a stretch. The reporter objects because the subpoena is overly broad, and this is perhaps the best argument. The alleged racist publicist, Leslie Sloan, is asking for communications beginning in December of 2022. What? As we know, filming on It Ends With Us and pre-production, where everything kicked off, that all didn't happen until 2023. Why does Leslie Sloan need any emails or texts from 2022? Additionally, and this is very strong, they argue, sorry, this is protected. This is privileged. This is reporter's privilege, as grounded in the First Amendment. They also object because there is some attorney-client privilege and work product doctrine happening. They object because there's information that is confidential and or proprietary. There's some lawyering here. They object because they use the word all documents. They object because of some of the definitions of things in the subpoena, such as communication, document. And perhaps the second strongest argument they make is the Sloan parties are seeking to compel the reporter to hand over information that can be easily subpoenaed by one of the parties to the lawsuit. In the latest filing with the judge, James's lawyer says that earlier this week, on May 27th, his lawyer and reps for Leslie Sloan had a 90-minute meet and confer to attempt to resolve the subpoena. And while some progress was made, they claim that Leslie Sloan's request is still overly broad and not necessary. In their latest filing, they say the Sloan parties can obtain communications with the Wayfarer parties and documents concerning the Wayfarer parties directly from the Wayfarer parties. They give us some tea of what happened in their meet and confer earlier this week. They say, the Daily Mail's attorney, in fact, during the meet and confer, the Sloan parties admitted they requested this discovery pertaining to the Daily Mail reporter from the Wayfarer parties, but are still negotiating with and have not moved to compel this information from them. Instead, the Sloan parties claim to need this discovery from Mr. Vitushka because the parties are adversarial to one another, and therefore the Wayfarer parties cannot serve as a reliable source for the information sought. How is that different than any other lawsuit? Seems to me like Leslie Sloan and her legal team are trying to circumvent the process of how things are done. Kind of like the Van Zandt CEO did to get her subpoena for Stephanie Jones's materials, which they were already aware of. They just needed them and a legal excuse to have them. So the reporter's lawyer says, because the Sloan parties must but have failed to first seek the discovery from the Wayfarer parties before burdening Mr. Vitushka, a non-party, the letter motion should be denied and the subpoena should be squashed. They re-emphasize that the materials wanted constitutes unpublished news-gathering materials which are protected by the reporter's privilege under both federal and state law. Then they cite the cases, the codes, the law. Yes. The Sloan parties have not and cannot overcome the privilege because they have not attempted to obtain the information from another source or shown that they cannot obtain the information from another source, namely the Wayfarer parties. This alone is fatal to their letter motion. They also assert, contrary to the Sloan party's assertion that the privilege does not apply to all of Vitushka's conversations simply because he happens to be a journalist, letter motion at 3, the reporter's privilege contemplates exactly that. And because some of the requests in the subpoena are not even within a time frame, such as all communications with Melissa Nathan without date limitation or connection to the parties of the film, the subpoena is overbroad and should be squashed. That all seems very reasonable to me. If I was Judge Lyman, I would say, one more meet and confer, and if you can't figure it out, then quashed. Thoughts on everything? Let's discuss in the comments section.